Για πείτε μου λίγο πιο ήρεμα. Πείτε μου πού είστε, πού είστε.
There was a burglary in a suburb of Athens. The burglars tortured the couple to ask where they had hidden their money. The police arrived at the scene. They find Caroline on the bed, dead, with her face facing down. And Lydia, their newborn baby, was on top of her dead mother.
Από ό,τι είχα διαβάσει τότε, ένας άνθρωπος πήρε τηλέφωνο το 100, όντας φημωμένος, τα μάτια του κλειστά με μονοτική ταινία και χρησιμοποιώντας τη μύτη του.
Had the perfect love stories, she had money, she had everything, and she had just had her baby and she lost her life just like that.
Ήταν ένα ρεπορτάζ διαφορετικό από τα άλλα, ήταν μια ιδιαίτερη περίπτωση, έχω ασχοληθεί με όλα, τα οποία όμως είναι πιο ευκρινή.
Εκείνη την ώρα δεν καταλάβαινα τι μου έλεγε, σαν να ζητάει βοήθεια, αλλά δεν μπορούσα να αντιληφθώ τι λέει, δεν καταλάβαινα τι λέει.
They were a very good-looking couple. They had a young baby. They were in their own homes. They didn't ask for trouble. Trouble came to them.
Her life was not what it looked like on social media. The diary tells a completely different story.
Looking back, it's crazy that it took so long to realize what was going on there. People were like 50-50. Half of the Greek society was shocked. Half of the Greek society said, I knew it.
This guy is probably the most reviled man in Greece.
A month after the attack, on the 17th of June 2021, the family of 19-year-old British national Caroline Crouch attend the memorial for the young mother brutally killed in her own home. Alongside her parents is Caroline's husband, Babis Agnostopoulos.
We see the emotional scenes. We see this man holding his baby daughter close, and it is all very emotional and it is all very heart-wrenching.
Detectives have pieced together the events leading up to Caroline's death. On the day of the memorial, police arrive on the island of Alonissos in Greece to tell her grieving widower, Babis, that they know who killed his wife. It's news the family have been waiting for since the night of her death.
Babis goes to Caroline's mother. He tells her that they have to go to Athens because there is a suspect and they have to check if this is the person that broke in our house.
As people watched officers turning up at the memorial service, they would have been heartened. They would have been really glad that it was on this day, the day of the memorial for Caroline, that the police had caught the murderer.
A month earlier, on the 11th of May 2021, emergency services receive a phone call from 32-year-old helicopter pilot Babis Agnostopoulos. He alerted them to a violent burglary at the home he shares with his 19-year-old wife Caroline and their infant daughter Lydia in the wealthy suburb of Glykanera, northeast of Athens.
We can hear him crying and being devastated and trying to understand what's happening.
Τα γλυκά νερά πού? Ναι.
His voice is low, but it's also weak. It's like obviously somebody who has some sort of problem.
You can hear the pain, the distress, and where he repeats himself again and again, you can just imagine that pain and you empathize with him.
Εκείνο το πρωινό της 11ης Μαΐου είναι κάτι το οποίο δεν πρόκειται να ξεπεράσω ποτέ.
The couple's neighbour and close friend Leela woke in the early hours of the morning disturbed by noises from next door. The family's puppy, Roxy, was unusually noisy.
Στις 4:20 ξύπνησα, πετάχτηκα από ένα θόρυβο που άκουσα και αυτός ο θόρυβος ήταν ένα κλάμα και έκλαιγε η Ρόξη.
A few hours later, Caroline's husband, Babis, calls the police. He tells them he had been tied up by intruders who had raided the family home, but he'd managed to partially free himself and raise the alarm. After calling the police, he calls his neighbour, Leela.
Στη συνέχεια, 6:17, λαμβάνω ένα τηλέφωνο στο κινητό μου και ακούω τον Μπάμπη να... Εκείνη την ώρα δεν καταλάβαινα τι μου έλεγε. Σαν να ζητάει βοήθεια, αλλά δεν μπορούσα να αντιληφθώ τι λέει, δεν καταλάβαινα τι λέει. Πετάγομαι από το κρεβάτι μου, αναστατωμένη. Ξυπνάω το σύζυγό μου, πάνω στον πανικό μου να ντυθώ, κλείνω το τηλέφωνο. Ξαναπαίρνω τηλέφωνο μου. Στη συνέχεια το σηκώνει, τον ακούω να φωνάζει και βγαίνω εκτός σπιτιού και εκείνη την ώρα βλέπω την αστυνομία να μπαίνει στο στενό.
Detectives arrive within minutes. The scene that confronts them is horrifying.
I remember that the policemen talking to the media, and they were in shock about what they saw on the scene. It was basically, they found Caroline's body lifeless, lying on the bed. She was tied up. Next to her was her 11-month-old baby, crying and pushing her with her hands, trying to wake her up. It was shocking for the policemen.
In addition to that, they would have had their husband who was distraught, and the place would have been dishevelled, you know, drawers emptied out, the place ransacked.
Police make a distressing discovery on the stairs of the 3-floor maisonette.
The policemen were also shocked to find out that the family dog was hung basically and was killed on their way out, probably because it was making a lot of noise, it was barking. But it was one of those things that added to the ferocity of the crime.
Όσο επαγγελματίας σκληρός και ψυχρός να είσαι και όση εμπειρία και να έχεις από τέτοια εγκλήματα, όταν πας σε ένα χώρο, βρίσκεις ένα άτομο νεκρό, ένα μωρό παιδί πάνω στο άψυχο κορμί και ένα σκυλί κρεμασμένο, πνιγμένο ουσιαστικά στην σκάλα του σπιτιού, είναι σοκαριστικά.
Babis Agnostopoulos, a commercial helicopter pilot, had lived at the property for almost 2 years with his British wife Caroline, a student at the University of Piraeus, and their infant daughter Lydia. The family quickly made friends with their neighbours.
Κάναμε παρέα σχεδόν αμέσως με τα παιδιά. είχαμε ταιριάξει. Ο σύζυγός μου ερχόντουσαν αρκετές φορές σπίτι μας. Απλά περισσότερο παρέα έκανα εγώ με την Καρολάιν.
Over the years, the two women became close and would spend time together, sharing their passion for baking and love of cats.
Θυμάμαι την πρώτη μου συνάντηση με την Καρολάιν σαν να ήταν χθες. Ήταν Ιούνιος του 19 και με τις λίγες κουβέντες που είπαμε κατάλαβα ότι με αυτή την κοπέλα θα γίνουμε φίλες και θα έρθουμε κοντά.
Babis was the only witness to what had taken place early that morning. He told detectives what had happened.
He said that basically 3 armed robbers broke into their house. They tied him up and they were threatening Caroline with a gun to tell them where they have valuables, where they have money, where they have jewelry.
It has to be said, like that's a very common thing in Greece, to have money stacked, hidden somewhere, after all our banks have been so close to bankruptcy. And Babis then said that he immediately told them where the money was, and that somehow Caroline, his wife, attacked them, got really angry, that she tried to stop them, so that's how she got killed.
Although tied up and blindfolded, Caroline's husband Babis said he'd noticed something that gave detectives a vital clue. The intruders were not Greek.
He said that these intruders were foreign. There were several of them. Foreigners had come in and disrupted this beautiful Greek idyllic family.
Μαθαίνω με αυτόν τον άσχημο τρόπο ότι η Καρολάιν δεν είναι στη ζωή. Σοκάρομαι. Έχασα τη γη κάτω τα πόδια μου. Και βγαίνω πανικόβλητη έξω. Εκεί θυμάμαι βλέπω να βγαίνει στη συνέχεια και ο σύζυγος της Καρολάιν από τη μεζονέτα. Βλέπω την Λιδία, την κόρη της Καρολάιν, στην αγκαλιά του αστυνομικού.
Oh my God, the mood around these days, it was crazy. Everybody in the cafes, everywhere, they were talking about that. They were talking about the poor young girl that lost her life, that seemed to have it all.
Investigators set about trying to find the identity of who had taken the life of a young mother. Five days later, they make a breakthrough and make an arrest.
He was Georgian and he was actually trying to leave the country on a false passport.
He was already wanted because his profile matched some other robberies that took place in Athens. This guy might be the guy.
Police now have a murder suspect in custody. Year-old Caroline Crouch, a British national who grew up in Greece, had been killed in her own home. The crime caused shockwaves in Greece and in the UK. The world's press descended, and Caroline's husband, Babis Agnostopoulos, the only witness to the killing, emerged to talk.
Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά, σε κανένα με τύχη. Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά.
He was grieving, collected, and willing to speak. So this is a very, very, very rare. A person who has been through such a heavy trauma.
Τι ζητάτε τώρα, τι ζητάτε? Να μην γίνει σε κανέναν άλλον ποτέ ξανά, τίποτα άλλο. Τα παιδιά ξέρουν τη δουλειά τους, θα τους πιάσουν και αυτό που πέρασα εγώ και η οικογένειά μου και η οικογένεια της γυναίκας μου να μην το περάσει ξανά κανείς ποτέ.
Caroline Crouch was born in Athens on the 12th of July 2001. Although born in Greece, she held British citizenship. Her father, David, a retired oil and gas executive, was born in Liverpool. Her mother, Susan, was originally from the Philippines. The family moved to the Greek island of Alonissos in 2003, when Caroline was nearly 2 years old.
Alonissos is such a beautiful island, a small beautiful island. It's one of many Greece's hidden gems.
She moved to Alonissos because they wanted to offer their baby a better life. She's described by her family, by her relatives and friends as a smiley child. She loved scuba diving, swimming, kickboxing.
Caroline was popular and well-liked within the small island community.
A young woman like Caroline was kind of a celebrity. Everybody in the island agrees on one thing. She was always smiling and very, very charismatic and kind with everybody.
In the spring of 2017, when Caroline was still at high school, she met dashing 28-year-old helicopter pilot Babis Agnostopoulos when they both attended a candlelight parade to mark Good Friday.
The couple met when Caroline was very young. She was 15 years old. Babis is a helicopter pilot. He was very well off. They met in Alonissos when Babis went there for holidays, and they fell in love.
Obviously also he's quite a handsome person, and his mother was actually a teacher in Alonissos, in the school where Caroline was going. And they started dating. Everybody accepted that relationship.
After 17 months of dating, Babis proposed to the 17-year-old Caroline. Despite the 13-year age gap, Caroline and her family agreed that she had found her perfect match.
Caroline was very young, but her mother described that she was happy with him, and they basically supported this relationship, both the family and the local community of Alonissos.
The couple's friend, Lila, knew them well. She had lived next door to them for 2 years.
Ήταν ένας άγγελος. Ο σύζυγός της ήταν ευγενικός, μετρημένος, λίγο πιο κλειστός χαρακτήρας από την Καρολάιν.
Three days after Caroline's 18th birthday, the couple went to the Algarve in Portugal. While on holiday, they married. Not the usual Greek wedding, but it was what the young couple wanted. The families accepted their decision.
Typically, a Greek wedding is this huge family event. And when I say huge, huge, I mean, even Hollywood has made movies about it, and how big and important weddings are for Greeks. So this is a bit peculiar, although probably all these people that thought this was a couple that was really in love must have thought, hey, they just wanted to have this magical moment among themselves and not invite other people.
They moved to Athens. She had one miscarriage right after their marriage, and then she got pregnant and had their little baby.
The loss of their first baby just 3 months into the pregnancy was devastating for the couple. After her death, the police found a key piece of evidence, which could underpin the entire case. It was a diary in which Caroline wrote, in her own words, about her relationship.
My love for this is more than anything else in the world. I'm so influenced by my hormones that Babis, he should know. I'm ashamed to tell him. I know he will support me, but I cannot tell him. But I'm trying for my baby.
Caroline was working towards a bright future for herself and her family, who had set up home in the affluent and peaceful suburb of Glikanera.
She was studying in the university in Piraeus, in Attica, near Athens. She was a young mother. She had a baby that was, at the time of her death, 11 months old. And she was living with her husband in a suburb of Athens, let's say around 40 minutes from the center of Athens.
Από τις αναρτήσεις στο Facebook και σε άλλες σελίδες κοινωνικής δικτύωσης δινόταν μια εικόνα ενός δειλιακού ζευγαριού, ρομαντικού, με φωτογραφίες από τα ταξίδια, ότι όλα ήταν πολύ καλά μεταξύ τους, ευτυχισμένοι.
Everybody thought that she'll have a great life and would do great things moving forward. And that obviously makes this story, if possible, even sadder.
By now, the killing of Caroline Crouch had become a worldwide news story. The media was still outside the family home, and Babis once again spoke with reporters.
Είναι τώρα που μιλάμε, από και τις 3 τελευταίες μέρες ήμασταν όλοι μαζί. Δουλεύουν όλη μέρα, όλο το βράδυ, όλη τη μέρα η αστυνομία των ανθρωποκτονιών. Αν υπάρχει κάποιος που μπορεί να τους βρει, είναι τα παιδιά αυτά. Από το πρωί μέχρι το βράδυ είναι εκεί.
Συνειδητοποίησαμε κάπου μέχρι ότι έχει περάσει το πρώτο σοκ. Τώρα πώς συνειδητοποίησαμε?
Δεν έχει περάσει το πρώτο σοκ ακόμα.
Having watched Babis being interviewed by the media, he does come across as a man in pain. That does take some real courage to do that. So I'm impressed with the fact that he actually managed to speak to the press the next day, and I'm a little surprised as well.
Days after her death, Caroline's body was transferred to Alonissos. She was buried in the cemetery that is, ironically and tragically, very close to her parents' house where she grew up. And a sign of the huge popularity of Caroline is that almost the whole island attended.
Caroline's funeral was a very emotional day. It was all over the Greek news, of course. I remember that basically the whole island was there mourning the loss, the tragic loss of the young girl. Of course, her husband was there, and he was together with Caroline's family and friends.
It couldn't have got more emotional for anybody who was watching, to see that young child who had just lost her mother, and to see the husband who's obviously grieving alongside the parents. You could see the emotion, you could feel the emotion as you watched it, and that then in itself generated even more interest in this young, beautiful couple that had been tragically affected in this way.
On the day of Caroline's funeral, detectives make a breakthrough in the case. Babis's description of 3 foreign nationals had led them to investigate the local Albanian and Georgian criminal gangs.
Όταν έγινε αυτή η επικήρυξη των δραστών και τα μέσα μαζικής ενημέρωσης άρχισαν διάφοροι να γράφουν τις δικές τους μικρές ή μεγάλες ιστορίες σε συνδυασμό με διάφορα εγκλήματα που έχουν γίνει στη χώρα μας. Κάποιοι γράφαν για κακούς Αλβανούς, κάποιοι για κακούς Πακιστανούς, κάποιοι για κακούς Γεωργιανούς κλπ.
The public was absolutely occupied by the fact that this was the result of the criminal activities of foreign nationals operating in Greece. Nothing else. The public discourse turned against the foreigners in general as a threat, and not only foreigners in general, but let's say specific nationalities.
Περίπου μία εβδομάδα μετά τη δολοφονία της Καρολάιν έγραψα για πρώτο στην εφημερίδα ότι υπήρξε μία προσαγωγή και σύλληψη του Γεωργιανού για μία άλλη ληστεία και για τον οποίο εξεταζόταν αν ήταν ο δράστης της δολοφονίας της Καρολάιν.
As Caroline's family lay her to rest, police swoop in on a Georgian national attempting to flee Greece.
Ένας τέτοιος συνελήφθη στη Θράκη την ώρα που προσπαθούσε να φύγει από τη χώρα για άλλα εγκλήματα τα οποία είχε διαπράξει.
He was taken to the headquarters of the police, and what he said later, and he was questioned for multiple of days.
The man was known to the police as a violent burglar with numerous convictions. His DNA is sent off for analysis.
Θυμίζω ότι αυτού το DNA είχε βρεθεί σε μία άλλη ληστεία, σε μία άλλη περιοχή.
Police then linked this murder to 12 other burglaries. To step from burglary to murder, that's a big step. You don't normally step up from a burglary straight to a murder.
Year-old Caroline Crouch had been tortured and killed in front of her 11-month-old daughter in the Athenian suburb of Glikanera. Detectives have a man in custody, but was he responsible for Caroline's death?
The problem is that you hear about that man, and obviously he's a criminal, but there has never been a murder in a burglary he's involved. So already, it's like, does the shoe fit, or would we like that shoe to fit? It's one thing to be a non-violent criminal. It's another thing to be a murderer.
Investigators find no physical evidence that placed the suspect in Caroline and Babis's home. They simply cannot link him to the killing.
Τα μέσα μαζικής ενημέρωσης γράψανε ότι πιθανόν να συνελήφθη ο δολοφόνος της Καρολάιν. Στην πορεία όμως είδαμε ότι ο άνθρωπος δεν είχε καμία σχέση.
It was so disappointing. Basically, it made everyone think that basically the police would never understand what happened there. Everybody felt that basically there will be no end in this story.
Five days after Caroline's death, her killer is still at large. Her husband, Babis Agnostopoulos, keen to keep his wife's murder in the public consciousness, regularly speaks with journalists and posts images of Caroline on social media.
5 days after Caroline's death, Babis posted on Instagram a picture of them with the quote like, "Farewell, my love." So that, of course, at the time, like, this was news, obviously, because you have the grieving husband and he's saying farewell to his wife on social media. But also, like, it was, for the Greek journalists, like, they just knew if you wanted to contact Babis, you just sent him a message on Instagram.
ότι ήταν διαρκώς online και έδινε απαντήσεις μέσω στο Instagram, μέσω σελίδων κοινωνικής δικτύωσης σε πολλές ερωτήσεις που του γίνονταν, λέγοντας βεβαίως είναι συγκινημένος, ευχαριστώ για το ενδιαφέρον σας.
Babis and Caroline had plans to build a dream home. Caroline's mother, Susan, had gifted them €50,000 to help out. Babis told the police that they kept some of the cash in their home, ready to get the build underway when they found the perfect location. And on the 6th of May, just 5 days before her death, he bought a plot of land in Perkermi, east of Athens.
Εγώ πάντα ήξερα ότι είναι ευτυχισμένη στο γάμο της, ήταν ένα παιδί που είχε όνειρα. Μέχρι και την τελευταία μέρα που μιλούσαμε στο τηλέφωνο, μου μίλησε για το σπίτι του, το καινούργιο του σπίτι που θα έχτιζαν, τα όνειρά της, τα όνειρα που είχε για τη Λιδία.
As the days got by, I remember that there was a feeling of, of anxiety. People were feeling a bit restless about the situation, that nobody was arrested about Caroline's death. There were also some other cases taking place during these days, some robberies and stuff like that, and people were feeling really unsafe.
Having released their initial suspect, police are back to square one. Desperate for a lead to bring Caroline's killer to justice, they hope that the results of the forensic examination of her body will give them much needed answers.
Όταν ένας άνθρωπος έρχεται σε επαφή με κάποιον άλλον άνθρωπο, δεν υπάρχει περίπτωση να μην έχουμε εκδορές, κάτι το οποίο δεν υπήρξαν εδώ στο σώμα της Caroline. Δεν υπάρχει περίπτωση να μην υπάρξει υδρότας.
The DNA samples from under the fingernails come back, and basically they are inconclusive. There was nothing there.
Η υπόθεση πήρε μεγάλη έκταση στα ξένα μέσα μαζικής ενημέρωσης, γιατί ήταν Βρετανίδα, η Καρολάιν είχε βρετανική υπηκότητα.
Ήταν ένα έγκλημα αυτό της Καρολάιν που προκάλεσε τα φώτα της δημοσιότητας παγκοσμίως, και πιστεύω ότι οφείλεται σε δύο λόγους. Ο πρώτος λόγος είναι το ότι πάνω στο άψυχο κορμί της ήταν αγκαλιά το μωρό παιδί της. Και το δεύτερο πράγμα ήταν ο θάνατος και το κρέμασμα του σκύλου μέσα στο σπίτι.
The Insta-perfect family may have looked like they were living the dream, but it soon emerged that it wasn't all glamour and smiles. The couple spent 3 months in therapy helping them deal with the loss of their first child. This revelation cast new light on Babis and Caroline's relationship.
The Greek police started speaking to a counselor that was basically talking separately both to Babis and to Caroline. And she starts giving many details about the couple. So it was the first indication that this couple didn't have this perfect life that we were all picturing, that there were issues between them.
Δεν μου είχε, τουλάχιστον σε μένα δεν είχε αναφέρει ποτέ ότι υπήρχε κάποιο πρόβλημα με τον σύζυγό της.
Although she did not confide in her friends, she found an outlet for her feelings in her diary.
Εκεί περιέγραφε προβλήματα που είχε με τον Μπάμπη Αναγνωστόπουλο, τριβές, καυγάδες, την αντιπάθεια που έτρεφε για μένα μεγάλο χρονικό διάστημα.
I'm 18 years old and I want to try to have a baby. I've not told Babis yet because today we argued.
When I look at that entry from the 15th of November 2019, Caroline is already starting to place limitations on the things that she says to Babis. She doesn't want to irritate him. She doesn't want to kind of set him off, essentially, in a way. So she is starting to use her diary as a way of getting those feelings out that she doesn't feel that she can discuss with her partner. So this does suggest to me that all is not well.
Detectives are still desperately searching for Caroline's killer. But their investigations are hampered by the lack of physical evidence on Caroline's body or in the home. The family had secured their home with CCTV. But when police examine the device, they make a disappointing discovery.
The card of the CCTV camera was taken away hours before the crime.
Detectives find it puzzling that the CCTV is missing, and that despite coming into contact with both Caroline and Babis and ransacking their home, the burglars have left no trace.
Ότι δεν είχαν βρεθεί αποτυπώματα των κακοποιών. Δεν είχε βρεθεί δεν είχε βρεθεί πουθενά DNA. Δεν υπάρχει κάμερα που να καταγράφει την άφιξή τους και την αναχώρησή τους.
There was no traces of DNA found anywhere in the house. So these burglars, they seem to be extremely lucky at this point. These burglars were the luckiest burglars in the history of burglaries.
Μπορεί να μην υπάρχουν στοιχεία βιολογικού υλικού σε ένα χώρο. Αυτό δεν σημαίνει ότι δεν έχω στοιχεία. Είναι μια ένδειξη.
"37 days after her death, the family hold a memorial for Caroline on the island of Alonissos, where she grew up. During the service, the police arrive. They have discovered who killed Caroline.
They said to Babis, "We have a suspect, you have to come with us immediately so that you can identify him." So this was quite an emotionally charged day anyway, but with the arrival of the police, it kind of ramps up the drama even more.
The case is about to be solved, and it feels like we're about to have like the big reveal.
37 days after Caroline Crouch's death, police arrive at her memorial service on the Greek island of Alonissos. They tell Caroline's husband, Babis Agnostopoulos, they need him back on the mainland to help identify the man who had killed his wife.
Two policemen approach him. They tell him that he has to follow them. He tries to get his phone and make a call. They tell him that he can't do that, and that he should avoid making a scene because there are all the TV crews there, and he should be discreet for his own good. Babis goes to Caroline's mother. We've seen on TV footage that basically he hugs her and they're crying for like 5 minutes. He tells her that they have to go to Athens because there is a suspect and they have to check if this is the person that broke in our house.
It was fitting that the husband, Babis, was being taken away to identify the man who had taken his wife away from him. So it was a brilliant end to a memorial service, but unfortunately it wasn't the end that we all expected because there was a tragic twist.
As police reviewed the case, the evidence at the crime scene posed more questions than answers. The only DNA found in the home belonged to the couple and their child. So detectives re-examined Babis's version of events.
Μας έδεσαν και από εκείνο το σημείο και μετά τους είχαμε πει ήδη που είναι τα χρήματα. Δεν ξέρω κάτι άλλο.
Όταν συνειδητοποίησα ότι η γυναίκα σου δεν βρίσκεται στη ζωή.
Όταν μέλησαν η αστυνομία. Όταν ήρθαν οι αστυνόμοι μέσα και μέλησαν και έβγαλαν από το κεφάλι μου τα δεσμά.
Και η κορούδα. Σιγά σιγά άρχισαν και δημιουργούνται πολλά ερωτήματα. Δηλαδή, πώς μπήκανε 3 ληστές από ένα μικρό παράθυρο το οποίο ήταν ανοιχτό, δεν παραβιάστηκαν.
There was no cry from the baby, while he claimed that there was a whole discussion with the robbers and Caroline and himself.
Γιατί ασχολήθηκαν στο να αφαιρέσουν μια κάμερα, μια κάρτα μνήμης από μια κάμερα, αφού είναι το πιο συνηθισμένο από τους κακοποιούς να ξυλώνουν την κάμερα και να την παίρνουν μαζί τους.
It's not that normal to expect when robbers find a couple just to tie the man and fight with the woman.
Detectives take Babis to police headquarters in Athens. They want answers to their unanswered questions.
Μία ημέρα πρώτου μνημοσύνου είχα πληροφορηθεί ότι η αστυνομία από αυτήν ακριβώς την εξέταση του κινητού και από τις αναφορές και από τις αναλύσεις τηλεφωνικών κλήσεων και από οτιδήποτε είχε καταλήξει στο συμπέρασμα ότι ο δολοφόνος της Καρολάιν δεν ήταν κάποιος ληστής, ότι ήταν ο Μπάμπης.
The police revealed to Babis that they were actually arresting him on suspicion of Caroline's murder. There was no suspect to identify. The suspect was him.
When Babis was taken away by the officers, I think that people were like 50-50. Half of the Greek society was shocked. Half of the Greek society said, I knew it.
Investigators try to piece together what they thought had happened that night. They believe that Babis had killed Caroline after the couple had argued about custody of their child.
On Caroline's phone, she was looking for Airbnbs or a hotel to go while they were arguing. So this shows that she was afraid and she was trying to leave the house.
Detectives believe that Babis wanted to get rid of his wife to be left alone with their child. They think that his meticulous plan consisted of 2 elements: the death of his wife and deflecting the blame onto someone else. Investigators have a theory that in the early hours of the morning of the 11th of May 2021, Babis started staging the scene of the crime by removing a window in the basement. However, beforehand, he ensured that his movements would not be seen.
At about 1:20 that morning, the memory card from the CCTV cameras had been removed. That was before Caroline's death. So the memory card was actually taken out and removed and destroyed.
After completing the first part of his alleged plan, investigators think that at around 4:05 a.m, Babis went up to the bedroom where his wife was sleeping and killed her.
Caroline was wearing a fitness watch which showed heightened activity of her heart at about just after 4 o'clock in the morning. So that again was evidence to disprove what Babis had told them.
Babis said he was tied up when the crime happened, when in fact his GPS on the phone shows him moving around.
The data from his phone suggested that Babis was not tied up when his wife died. In fact, it showed him moving through the house. Detectives believe he was trying to stage a break-in. Babis then killed the family dog and went to get his infant daughter, placed her on top of her dead mother, then tied himself up and made the call to the police with his fabricated story of a burglary.
He had said everything Greeks wanted to hear. It was foreigners that killed his wife. He immediately had abandoned the money just to save himself and his family, but the burglars were really nasty. That shows how great that he was at playing public opinion. That shows you how intelligent he was in understanding, like, what Greeks would want to believe, like how he could frame the story to make him an ideal victim.
Babis had claimed that he managed to partially untie himself and call the police using his nose to dial the number.
Δεν σας κρύβω ότι είχα 10 λεπτά που δοκίμαζα στο κινητό μου τηλέφωνο, το οποίο έβλεπα με τη μύτη να καλέσω ένα νούμερο. Δεν μπόρεσα ποτέ να το καλέσω. Και έλεγα, μα είναι δυνατόν αυτός ο άνθρωπος, πώς τα κατάφερε και κάλεσε το 100 με τη μύτη. Ενίσχυσε όλα τα στοιχεία τα οποία ενδεχομένως είχαν για το κατηγορητήριο εις βάρος του. Η τεχνολογία βοηθάει στις εξιχνιάσεις εγκλημάτων.
Αν ο Μπάμπης Αναγνωστόπουλος, ο οποίος πίστευε ότι έχει πείσει την αστυνομία, είχε πετάξει το κινητό του, δεν θα υπήρχε αυτό το αποδεικτικό στοιχείο.
Detectives think they have pieced together the events of that night. But what they still need is a confession.
When Babis goes into this interview, he would have been rather confident, quite sure of himself, because weeks and weeks and weeks have passed and he's not been arrested for murder.
Και όταν αρχίζει η ανάκριση δίνει σημασία σε 2 γλώσσες. Το πρώτο πράγμα βέβαια που δίνει σημασία είναι τα στοιχεία, τα αποδεικτικά που έχει στα χέρια του. Από εκεί και πέρα δίνει πολύ μεγάλη σημασία στη γλώσσα του σώματος και το δεύτερο στη γλώσσα του στόματος.
This is going to be significantly more difficult for Babis. This is something where the police have a lot more information. They are testing his story. They are drawing out the inconsistencies in his story. It's going to be really challenging for him.
Investigators question Babis Agnostopoulos about the events leading up to his wife's death.
Αυτή μπορεί να συνελήφθη κάποια στιγμή, αυτό συνέχισε, επέμενε, μετά και κράτησαν 3, 4, 5 λεπτά ώσπου να νιώσει πλέον το κορμί της άψυχο και ότι την έχει σκοτώσει.
When the details started coming out about how this happened, I mean, everybody was shocked.
Of June 2021, Babis Agnostopoulos is in police custody, held under suspicion of murdering his 19-year-old wife, Caroline Crouch. For 8 hours, detectives questioned Babis on his account of the night his wife was killed.
So he would have been feeling quite sure of himself at the beginning. But I think as it unfolds, it becomes quite clear to him that he is now losing control of the narrative.
After hours of interrogation, Babis confesses that he did the crime. At that point, I think that pretty much the Greek society has realized that he he was the person that was to blame for Caroline's murder.
Θυμάμαι τη στιγμή που έμαθα ότι ομολόγησε ο Μπάμπης. Θυμάμαι ήταν 5η 17 Ιουνίου βράδυ, όταν το ακούσαμε στις ειδήσεις. Και πάθαμε όλοι σοκ. Δεν μπορούσα να πιστέψω αυτό που άκουγα. Δεν το πίστευα, δεν μπορούσα να το πιστέψω. Δεν μπορούσα. Όχι, όλοι μας.
But others thought Babis's behaviour after the death of his wife had always been unusual.
It always struck me as a very weird the way he behaved and the attention he wanted from the media.
Βέβαια η γλώσσα του σώματος του Μπάμπη μίλησε από την πρώτη μέρα, που κράταγε αγκαλιά το παιδάκι του και δεν το άφηνε να φύγει. Δεν το έδωνε σε ξένα χέρια. Μίλησε το σκυμμένο κεφάλι. Μίλησε όταν πήγε και έδωνε την επόμενη της κηδείας συνέντευξη στους δημοσιογράφους έξω από το σπίτι. Αυτά είναι στοιχεία. Βεβαίως δεν είναι αποδεικτικά στοιχεία.
Babis admits to police that he was responsible for Caroline's death and that he was sorry for what he had done. But he claims to have an explanation for smothering his wife to death in front of their 11-month-old child.
Bobby said that during that night they had a fight. Caroline told him to leave their bed. They were arguing, and she took the baby and she put it in her swing, basically threw it in the swing. That's the way Babis described it. And he was very mad at her for the fact that she didn't behave well to their child. He was very angry and his mind basically blurred.
Η ιστορία λοιπόν μετά την αποκάλυψη που προέβαλε ο Μπάμπης Αναγνωστόπουλος είναι ότι είχαμε έναν καυγά εκείνο το βράδυ, δεν είχα προγραμματίσει να τη σκοτώσω.
So he claims that he did everything because he was pressed by Caroline, that he was threatened that she will take the child, that she was not a good mother, that she was treating the child bad, and they had a fight, and he had to do it to save his child.
This attempt to besmirch her character and make people think badly of her is also, of course, an attempt to get him more sympathy and more lenient treatment, which goes completely against the narrative that he has any remorse or contrition for what he's done.
In the diary discovered by police at the family home, an entry written by Caroline in the year before her death once again reveals her true state of mind.
After quite a few tears and quite a lot of shouting, I told him that before I fell pregnant, I'd been thinking of leaving him. But then, after, I became pregnant, so I stayed with him so that my daughter would not grow up without her two parents.
So Caroline stayed. The evidence points to the fact that Babis killed Caroline while she slept. But he tries to defend his actions to police.
He said that he suffocated her during her sleep because he was afraid of her because she had a black belt in kickboxing. And he did it in that way because he was afraid his wife would beat him up.
Για να την πιέσει και να την πνίξει θα έπρεπε να την πιέσει 5 λεπτά. Δηλαδή ήταν και από τα πρώτα ερωτήματα που είχαν τεθεί.
The fact that he waited until she fell asleep in order to do that shows that he did that cold-blooded.
Babis also tells police what he did to the family's pet, Roxy.
As part of Babis's confession, he confessed that he had actually drowned the 7-month-old husky puppy and then hung it up. Now, that takes a certain type of person to actually, as part of staging a burglary, to actually do that to their own pet.
For me, one of the key points that showed just how in control and how calculating Babis was when he said to the police, "I killed the dog because I knew no one would believe that I would be capable of killing the dog, and therefore people would not believe I'd done it." He had thought clearly, what's my reputation? What will people believe I'm capable of? How can I use that to my own advantage?
I was shocked at how audacious he had been. This man had pretended, and he had got away with it for so long.
Όταν η αστυνομία συνέλαβε το σύζυγό της και ομολόγησε, εκεί για μένα ήταν το δεύτερο σοκ. Πραγματικά δεν μπορούσα να το διαχειριστώ.
Babis Agnostopoulos has confessed to being responsible for the death of his wife, Caroline. But now, he denies murder.
Ο Μπάμπης ο Αγνωστόπουλος και τόσο έξυπνος και είχε τόσο πολύ προσεκτικά σκηνοθετήσει και έκανε όλες αυτές τις ενέργειες που ξεγέλασε ακόμα και πολύ έμπειρους αστυνομικούς.
This level of villainy, he probably in the Greek consciousness reached the highest possible one. This guy is probably the most reviled man in Greece.
On the 17th of June 2021, Caroline Crouch's husband, Babis Agnostopoulos, is charged with her murder. He tells police that he's responsible for her death, but denies murder.
Από τη μία είχα χάσει τη φίλη μου με αυτόν τον τραγικό τρόπο και από την άλλη συνειδητοποιώ ότι ο σύζυγός της, που ήμασταν και φίλοι, της πήρε τη ζωή. Δεν μπορούσα να το διαχειριστώ. Είναι σοκαριστικό για μένα αυτό.
Once again, detectives turn to Caroline's diary to establish the true nature of the couple's relationship.
I argued with Babis again, this time a lot. I hit him, I cursed him, and he broke the door. The only thing I wanted was for him to ask me if I was well when I woke up. I woke up feeling so weak and tired. I'm thinking about leaving, going to my sister. I don't know if I can continue with Babis. I love him so much that I can't leave him, even if this relationship is harming me.
We do often see victims arguing back, and we see victims even physically fighting back against the coercive control. And sometimes we then think, oh, they can't be a real victim, they fought back. He might give the impression that she wasn't a real victim because she fought back, but in my opinion, she very much was.
In November 2021, pre-trial court documents were published detailing the case against Babis. They claim that this was no crime of passion, but he'd carefully planned the death of his wife. They believe she'd been asleep for 2.5 hours before she died. And he had shut down the security camera, then went upstairs and suffocated Caroline. It took 5 minutes for her heart to stop beating.
It appears to me that this is premeditated. He must have walked over to that bed where she was asleep and smothered her. It takes a lot of strength to smother an adult, to press down and hold them down.
Finally, Babis called the police with a story of foreign intruders. They say all of this demonstrates that he was in a calm mental state. Prosecutors also claim that during their marriage, Babis increasingly manipulated and controlled his wife.
She left her house and she went to live in a kind of remote place in the suburbs of Athens. She didn't see many of her friends. She was a bit cut off from her family.
Caroline did not have money on her own, and it seems that she should ask Babis Anagnostopoulos for money. She was not attending university, and she was isolated from her friends. He knew at every time where Caroline is going and could follow her from her mobile. We have clear elements that Caroline was isolated and totally dependent on him.
The killing of Caroline Crouch, one of 13 female killings or femicides to be reported in 2021, shocked Greece. Her death forced Greek society to discuss the issues surrounding hidden domestic abuse.
The only thing that came out of this case was that the term femicide has been introduced in the Greek media. Issues of domestic abuse are not being very thoroughly discussed in Greece up to now. And this case gave, somehow tragically, gave an opportunity for the Greek society to realize how deep this problem is.
Babis Agnostopoulos is awaiting trial in Korydallos prison in Athens.
Babis Anagnostopoulos is currently facing charges, 2 felonies, murder and abuse of the dog, falsely accusing others and giving false testimonies to the police.
If convicted of murder, he will face a life sentence.
If Babis does go to court and proves that this was not a premeditated murder, he will get a lighter sentence. And by premeditated, I mean that he hadn't planned to kill Caroline.
On the 11th of November 2021, an Athens court awarded custody of Caroline's child Lydia to her parents, revoking any parental rights Babis may have had as her father, and granting limited visitation rights to his parents.
Σαφώς και τη σκέφτομαι τη Λιδία. Η Καρολάιν έφυγε. Ο σύζυγος αυτή τη στιγμή είναι στη φυλακή και υπάρχει πίσω η Λιδία. Η Λιδία ευτυχώς μεγαλώνει με τους γονείς της Καρολάιν. Μια εξαιρετική οικογένεια. Θεωρώ ότι μεγαλώνει στα σωστά χέρια. Σκεφτείτε τι παιδί μεγάλωσαν εννοώ για την Καρολάιν. Οπότε φανταστείτε πώς θα γίνει και η Λιδία.
I hope that this case will live for long in the Greek society's memory because it will remind us of, first of all, the many wrong perceptions we have about people, and it will also remind us how much we should look into the issue of domestic violence.
Caroline could have had 60, 70 more wonderful years on this earth. Her family have lost a daughter, her child has lost a mother forever. So all of that needs to be borne in mind and I think given much greater emphasis. And we should try to remember who Caroline was, the person that she was before she met Babis. You know, she was a full and wonderful person.
Ακόμα και αυτή τη στιγμή που μιλάμε δεν μπορώ να το πιστέψω. Δεν μπορώ να πιστέψω ότι αυτό το παιδί που γνώριζα έφτασε να κάνει αυτό το τρομερό πράγμα, αυτή την πράξη.
We don't have a conviction yet, but we do have a confession. So now, all we have to do is wait and see what happens next.
Η Καρολάιν ήταν ένας άγγελος. Ήταν άτυχη όσοι δεν έχουν γνωρίσει. Ήταν ένα παιδί που δεν έλειπε ποτέ το χαμόγελο από τα χείλη της. Η απώλειά της είναι πολύ μεγάλη. Ζει μες στην καρδιά μου και στη σκέψη μου. Την αγαπώ και δεν μιλάω σε παρελθοντικό χρόνο, γιατί για μένα ζει μέσα μου. Μου λείπει πολύ.